Thank you, sir, giving me the opportunity. Thank you so much. Being a part of a world record. So I'm going straight away to the topic, research methodology, something which is very familiar among the teachers, but still there might be some mistake from our part also. As a doctorate teacher, myself, I get sometimes confused with the different sampling methods and all. So I would like to refresh my knowledge as well as our knowledge in this platform. So once again, I say thank you to the management, especially Dr. Betkar MM, for giving me the opportunity in such a worldwide platform. So let me share the PPT. Hope the screen is visible. Okay. Okay. So I'm dealing with the topic research methodology. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dr.Juby Thomas, teaching in Saintgits College, Kottayam. It's in Kerala. Okay. Uh, So, what do you mean by the term research? So, research means research. When you split the term research as research of something or search of something. So, when we search a thing which we don't know, or when we find a solution, or when we go for a search for a solution of a problem, we need to follow some or the other strategies. And these strategy sum together is termed to be the methodology. So let's come deep into the concept of research methodology. When we talk about the term research methodology, it coincides with research method. So what is the difference between research method and research methodology? So the first difference is the research method means the various ways and means of conducting a research that involves the conduct of experiment, test, survey, and the like. Whereas methodology is the science of systematically solving a research problem. So method involves experiment, test, survey, all these when it is done in a systematic way, it becomes research methodology. So research method aims at finding the solution for a research problem, whereas research methodology, it learns the various technique we use in the conduct of research, such as percentage analysis, chi-square. Sum together of all these tools can be termed as research methodology. Next is the different types of research. On the basis of the objective, research are classified as functional research, applied research, and action research. Some or the other way, research means to define a solution for a problem. On the basis of the nature of the data, research are classified as quantitative and qualitative. In quantitative, numerical data have been used, whereas in qualitative data has been used. On the basis of the nature of finding, research are being classified as explanatory, exploratory, and descriptive. Usually we do with descriptive research in terms of commerce and management. And next is on the basis of experimental manipulations, that is experimental research and non-experimental research. These research are usually done by science backgrounds. On the basis of approaches involved, it has been classified as longitudinal and cross-sectional research. So this is the main topic of my PPT, that is steps of research process. There are usually 7 steps which a scholar as well as a degree student who is doing a project come across. First is define the research problem. The initial step is to define the research. What is the problem? The problem should be clearly defined with the objectives and what the problem is, the scope of the problem, and how depth the problem is going to be studied. The second step is the review of literature. Review of literature refers to the area where the problem has been already studied, or the related area where the study has been already made. The review of literature help us to find the gap of our study, that is termed to be research gap. Next is to formulate the hypothesis. Hypothesis denotes the tentative solution for our problem. Usually, hypotheses are of different types, but with regard to a research scholar, hypothesis is broadly classified as alternative and null hypothesis, which can be made clear in later slides. The fourth step is to prepare the research design. That means how the research is going to be done, which all area will be covered, what are the variable factors that are taken, what are the sample design, what are the methodology or tools taken for the data, and how the data are to be collected. The fifth stage states that the data collection. The data from the part of the researcher can be collected in mainly 2 ways. That is primary data collection and secondary data collection. Primary data collection denotes like direct collection from the variable, both independent and dependent variable might be, direct collection from the observer, direct collection from the customers, etc. Whereas secondary data collection denotes taking data from already published sources, like journals or a research from a different research thesis which has already been submitted. And the sixth stage is data analysis, the simple tool used for data analysis or interpretation. Actually, data analysis gives you the meaning from the data which has been collected, or from the raw data. Data analysis, it helps to interpret it into the data which has been collected. And finally is the report writing, or what you have found out from the survey, or what you have going to have give a conclusion for your work to be done. These are the 7 important stages, or 7 important paths through which a researcher comes. Next is with regard to the variable, which have been stated while saying the research process. There are mainly 2 types of variable, that is independent variable and dependent variable. The first variable is called the independent variable. This is the part of the experiment that can be changed and tested. The independent variable happens first and can be considered the cause of any change in the outcome. For example, sometimes demand and supply. It is uh, it is an for example, the age of a parent and age of a son. Sometimes as well as the price of a product and the prevailing competitor's price. All these are the examples of a dependent variable. In these examples, one variable is directly affects the change in the other variable. Whereas in case of independent variable, the example might be the price of gold and the price of silver. Both are not interrelated. Okay, the outcome is set called the dependent variable. The independent variable in our previous example is not studying for a test. the dependent variable that you are using to measure the outcome of your test score. Next is with regard to hypothesis. I have already stated about the hypothesis. Hypothesis is a prediction, it is a tentative solution of the given problem. A hypothesis is specific, testable prediction. It describes in concrete terms what you expect will happen in a certain circumstance. So, broadly, there are different types of hypotheses, but as a research scholars or teachers are focusing in research, mainly we use null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is symbolically represented as H naught or H zero. Alternative hypothesis is symbolically represented as H1. So, what is null hypothesis? It is a statistical hypothesis that states that there is no difference between a parameter and a specific value, or that there is no difference between two parameters. In short, a null hypothesis stay neutral between two parameters, whereas alternative hypothesis that states the existence of difference between a parameter and a specific value, or state that there is a difference between two parameters. So alternative hypothesis states that there is a difference between two parameters, whereas null hypothesis remains neutral. Next is with research design. So, research design refers to the overall strategy that you choose to integrate the different components of the study in a coherent and logical way, thereby ensuring you will effectively address the research problem. It is constitute the blueprint of the collection, measurement, and analysis of data. So, research design is an important process or important stage in the path of research process, because here we say how the data is collected and how it is analyzed and interpreted, as well as its stage, from where, from whom, how much, all is being described in research design. So, research design are mainly of four: explanatory, descriptive, diagnostic, and experimental. Next comes the sample. Actually, sample is a statistics, whereas population is a parameter. A subset of a population is termed to be a sample. Usually, for research process, we take sampling methods, or we take the samples. Broadly, we define the data collection as sampling methods and census method. In sampling method, only a representation of the population is being considered, whereas in census method, the whole population is considered. So, a sample refers to a smaller, manageable version of a large group. It is a subset containing the characteristics of a large population. So we'll get into deep into sampling methods. So there are three types of sampling. Usually we are familiar about only two types. Actually, there are three types of sampling: random sampling, non-random sampling, and mixed sampling. We are not much familiar about mixed sampling, but we are familiar about random and non-random sampling. So in random sampling, again it has been divided as simple random sampling, stratified sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling. So simple random sampling means lottery method. For example, usually lotteries are taken in simple random sampling. We may put the names, or the population has a whole in a particular box. It can be the customers, it can be a students of a particular class. Okay, from that lot box, we take randomly or we pick out randomly 50 or 20, whatever the size is. That method is termed to be simple random sampling. Next comes the stratified sampling. Usually, even I get confused with stratified sampling and cluster sampling. Actually, both the sampling methods are equally the same, but the only difference is in both the cases, the whole population is divided into different groups, and each group is termed to be strata in stratified random sampling and cluster in cluster sampling. The only difference between the two is in stratified random sampling, each strata is homogeneous, whereas in cluster, each cluster is heterogeneous. This is the only difference between the two. As well as saying when the whole population is divided into different stratas or different clusters, from each cluster or each strata, simple random method is being made applicable. And next comes the simple, systematic sampling. In systematic sampling, the population used in those cases where complete list of population from which sample is to be drawn is available. Under this method, the item in the population are included in interval of magnitude k. For example, if we want to take some sample from a class, we arrange the whole class uh, according to the roll number. And the first one is picked, then the fifth one is picked, then 10th one is picked, 15th one, 20th one. Here K denotes the interval, and here the interval is 5. So in this method or this procedure of taking the sample is termed to be systematic sampling. Next comes multi-stage sampling. Multi-stage sampling, this sampling procedure carried out in several stages. The material is regarding has made up of a number of first stage sampling unit, each of which is made of second stage. So same sampling procedure in taken in different steps. Clear? Then comes the non-random samplings is convenient samplings. We take the sample according to our convenience. Second is judgment sampling. That is, the researcher make a prejudgment which are the samples to be taken. He makes prejudgment. And next is snowball. We know that when you go to snow area like Kashmir or wherever there is snow, or in abroad, when we make a small ball of snow, and when we roll it in snow, gradually the snow becomes a bigger ball. In the same manner, the researcher may approach the first respondent. He may collect data from the first respondent. The researcher may ask the first respondent to suggest some other respondents. From his suggestions, we may approach the other respondents. Gradually, this tree goes on bigger. So these are the different sampling methods. Usually we get confused by stratified and cluster sampling. Let me make it clear. In stratified, each smaller group is homogeneous, whereas in cluster, it is heterogeneous. So next process is with data collection. There are primary data collections and secondary data collections. Primary are usually from questionnaire. Here it is stated as photographies collection. I have used the technique because the respondent audience may be from different professions. So photography refers to journalism and all. In questionnaire itself, we have another method is interview schedule. The main difference between questionnaire and interview schedule is that in questionnaire we may distribute the questionnaire to the respondent, whereas in an interview schedule the interviewer will have a predefined questions and he may dictate it to the interviewee and make some clarifications according to the need of the interviewee and then collect the data. Secondary source has early defined. It is from book publications, journals, reports, internet, newspaper, article. But when you uh, search for data through internet or Google, make sure that the data are authentic. Next is with regard to primary data collection, the major difference between primary data collections and secondary data collection. Primary data are real-time data, whereas secondary data are past data. The hidden threat in secondary data is that since it is a past data collection, there is a threat that the data becomes outdated with regard to financials areas, even in every field, irrespective of the area. Secondary data might be sometimes outdated. Okay. Sure about the source of data when it comes to primary data, and not sure about the source of data when it comes to secondary data. Primary data helps to give result findings, whereas in case of secondary, refining the problems. Primary data it is very costly, whereas secondary data it is cheap. Primary data avoid biasness of the respondent. Secondary data cannot know in data bias or not, and more flexible in case of primary data, whereas in secondary data it is less flexible. Next is with regard to the tools, with regard to data collections, we have questionnaire, as I've already explained, interview schedule. Next is observation schedule in case of science and all, even in case of commerce management and all. The researcher can go and visit the area and personally collect the data, scales, test, inventories, checklist, operaries, sociogram, sociometrics, and uh, these are the tools. And the technique uses in case of questionnaire, it can be written or oral. Interview, it can be face to face or telephonic. Or electronic, net, group, video conference. Next is with regard to observation. It is observation as informed. Scales, it is projective techniques. And inventory, checklist, it's all panel methods. Next is with regard to data collection. Data, actually, the data collected would be in a raw form. It has to be coded. Or in terms of commerce, we use tally marks to classify and tabulate the data. Once it has been tabulated, we get a refined form of figures, and it has been entered into commercial software like SPSS package and all. SPSS are Python in case of computer science and all. There are lots of software packages which help us in data analysis. Before entering data, for example, even in case of SPSS or R, we have to change or convert the raw data into a polished format. Okay, unless and until it has been in a polished format, we can't use such tools. Next, with our same thing, it has been already explained. The data has to be edited, coded, classification, tabulation, and graphing. So, classification denotes we use the tool like tally marks, putting on tally marks. Tabulation means for example, if the question is with regard to age of the respondent, 15 to 20, 10, 16 to 21 to 25, the respondent would be 30. So converting it into a frequency table is termed to be tabulation. So actually, I have come to my end of the topic. Actually, it is just a primary thing with regard to research methodology. Actually, even though it is a primary part of research methodology, I feel this all the topic which I have come across is very important as a beginner of researcher, especially to research scholars and the teachers who are writing articles in journals or giving book chapters. All these things are to be kept in mind while doing a research process, especially even in case of article and all. We They give due importance to data collections, hypothesis, review of literature, as well as the tool used, isn't it? Okay. And finally, thank you so much. Shauta ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your question. What's the use of research in day-to-day life? Actually, we make research from starting of life in the morning, from the day, it's beginning of the day itself. Actually, let me quote an example which you usually here in Kerala, we stick on with meals with rice content. So when we cook in the morning, when we boil the rice, Frequently, after half an hour or after 15 minutes, we just take a sample in order to know whether the whole rice is being cooked or not. So, in every minute of our life, we use the technique of sampling or researcher. And when we come to professional life, in olden days, even my parents were professionals. So in their time, as a teacher, it was enough that once we get a government job, they were in a safe mode. But now in UGC itself, in order to get increments in our college and all, we get annual increments on the basic. The normal increment is sure in all cases, but for getting an additional increment, we need to do research publications. Research publication is not a matter of getting an increment, but also for our personal career growth. Clear? Nowadays, even the other way of research, what we do is in our classes, when students ask question with general matters, for example, me teaching financial surveys or cost accounting, they may be asking questions. It would be very familiar with you, you peoples also. Okay, so some or the other way we are in search of some or the other knowledge. So whether it is a professional life or a personal life, in both the case, we need to have some or the other research work. Okay, there's another question from Asha Rana. I can just see in the chat box. How can one collect useful data and analyze the data? Okay. Data collections, as I said earlier, data collections are basically two types, primary and secondary data. Secondary data can be usually as a commerce and management teacher. Secondary data can be used in case of financial analysis, something topic related to financial comparison, etc., etc. But in all other cases, I suggest to use primary data collections. So primary data collections can be useful or it can be authentic only if we involve in it, when we have our full-fledged involvement in data collection. I had my PhD in Wells University, Chennai. So I had a data collection in IT sector in Chennai. So in order to make maximum reliability in my data collection, I went to Chennai from Kerala, stayed in Chennai for 1 month for collecting data from different IT parks. It is the reliability depends on how you involve in it. 20% of the reliability of the data might be biased due to the respondent. But to a large extent, you can avoid that bias by your involvement. So next question. Thank you, Asha ma'am, for the question. Next question is from Shahid. What are the things we keep in mind while writing an abstract? A good question. Usually, even I find some difficulties when I write that abstract, because it's very easy to draft an article and it is very difficult to write the abstract for that particular article, because some journals may say that the abstract should be in 100 words or 150 words. The maximum abstract size is 250. 250 to 300, not more than that. So usually what I practice is that once we draft the article, the introduction is being capsuled to 1 or 2 sentences. And the objective, there might be 2 or 3 objectives, but the main objective is clarified in the abstract. Then the findings related to that objective or that particular hypothesis is being clearly defined. This is the way which I adopt. There are some other ways that introduction is being capsuled, whereas the objective and the hypothesis is being totally taken off. Then some people write the findings and conclusions in a capsule manner.
Yes, sir. I am totally satisfied with ma'am's answer. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A good lecture. I have joined late, but I am satisfied. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, madam. One question is there.
Okay, sir.
Research methodology, how to writing the research. Art of writing is a very important aspects of methods of research report writing with effectively informative session. All the sessions is a research report writing with the major work done. What are the samples of research report writing for applying for very important to get important researcher how to get the free judgment. Researcher make respondent other respondents very effectively informatively session, madam.
Hmm.
This is different between techniques of a research report. Please explain me, madam.
Can I make the question clear? That the question is the methods of research writing, right?
Hmm.
Report writing.
Report writing.
Okay, fine. Research report writing, usually the method followed is classified into the whole report is being classified into 5 parts. The first is introductory part in case of chapterization and all. First is introductory part, which deals with a draft idea about the research problem and the area to be covered and the design or the research design, the major research design, how the data is being collected. Then with regard to the state the major objectives of the problem which we have already defined. Then comes the statement of the problem or the clear definition of the problem. Then the objectives of the problem. This is all combined in introductory stage. Second comes the review of literature, where you need to find out area related to the which has been already studied, which helps you to get a research gap or which throws a light to your research. And the third area is with regard to data collection and analysis, tabulations, and fourth is with regard to data checking, that is hypothesis testing. And hypothesis testing tools is nowadays SPSS is being updated. We have AMOS, which helps you to analyze the different tools like chi-square, ANOVA, all the non-parametric and parametric tests. Then comes the final findings and conclusions of the study. Later on, you can add the APL or MLA format in your bibliography. Actually, there's a tool nowadays we are familiar. Last time when I entered the this meeting, I came across teachers saying about the AI tool. Nowadays, there are lots of AI tools which helps to redraft the research. But for example, ChatGPT version 4. But make sure that once you read it out, but I'm not that sure that it may detect plagiarism. Uh, Artificial intelligence tools, ChatGPT, they assure that plagiarism won't be detected, but still there are Turnitin tools which detect plagiarism from ChatGPT. Using of artificial intelligence and related tools, we should be very caution. But grammarly checking like Quillboard, to a large extent, it avoids plagiarism.
Madam, one question is there, how quoted the references where bibliography write the research report, madam?
Okay, it is very important. We have two format, APL format and MLA format. In MLA format, the pattern of writing is first the author's name, then year, then the name of the article, then name of the
Documents. Documents.
pardon,
Name of the documents.
the name of the journal or documents. Then comes the volume, issue. Then you can put the page number. In the other format, the year of publication of the journal is given in the end.
Another question is there, madam. What are the methods of sampling information for users of work in research?
Okay, methods of sampling. In simple manner, I would like to say that broad classification is sampling and non-sampling methods. First one is simple random sampling. In simple random sampling, it's lottery method. Usually, lottery winners used to put the whole population in a box, then pick out the number of samples you need. I quoted an example in the earlier. Ma'am, Asha ma'am asked that day-to-day life in Kerala and all, we use rice in our meals. We can't eliminate rice from our diet format. So usually when we cook a rice, we never press each rice in that pot. We just take a sample with the help of a spoon, and we just check whether the rice which we have taken is being cooked. If that sample is cooked, the whole rice in the pot is assumed to be cooked. That's the simple random sampling. Then comes stratified and cluster sampling. In stratified and cluster sampling, the whole population is being divided into different groups, and each group is termed to be either strata in stratified sampling and cluster in cluster sampling. The only difference between stratified and cluster is that in stratified, the small group is homogeneous, whereas in cluster, it is heterogeneous. Then comes the systematic sampling, that we make use of interval. For example, we want to select 20 people or 20 students from a class of 50. So we can use in systematic manner means we take the first person with roll number 1, then roll number 5, 10, 15, 20. In that manner, it is termed to be systematic. Then comes non-random sampling, that is judgment sampling. The researcher make a prejudgment from whom the data has to be collected. Next come convenience sampling. Here the researcher collects data according to his or her convenience. Next come quota sampling.
Madam, how can work with final study findings proper work in research?
Pardon, I'm not clear.
How can work with final study of findings proper work in research?
Final findings, isn't
Final
it?
findings.
Findings. Okay. How to work with final findings. So findings mainly, and from my viewpoint, finding is an important thing, but much much more important is that in order to get a better findings or good findings, two three things which have we have to consider is while data collection, there should not be any bias. Second is to take appropriate tool. For example, for certain data where chi-square has to be used, we are not using chi-square. Instead of that, we are using ANOVA. The reliability of data may change and it may affect our study. So for using chi-square, there is some strategies or there is some rules. For using ANOVA, there is some other strategies. Or for using Z-test, T-test. For example, when we go into deep into the test, I don't think so. The time span will allow me, but still I'll make the clarification. While using Z-test, the number of samples size should be more than 30. And for using t-test, the number of samples should be less than or equal to 30. Clear? And the other thing which affects the finding is that the more data you collect, the more reliable or more accurate the findings will be. So, all on a sudden, we can't make the finding perfect. We can't make the finding perfect at the last moment. The finding will be perfect when we make all these procedure in an accurate and unbiased manner. Initially, we can make only bias in case of data collection. So in order to reduce the bias in data collection, we need the researchers' wholehearted, full involvement. The interest of the researcher to the work, what he or she is doing, to a large extent, it can reduce the bias. But we can't predict the bias from the side of the respondent. So in such case, what we do is we increase the data which is collected, and we have cron batch tests to test the reliability of data and all. See, I have for my study it was enough for with regard to, and that means in my case, in my study, it was enough that I could collect 350 data, 350 response. That was enough. But when I tested my reliability, the Cronbach's test found to be 8 point. So in order to have a good reliability, I need to get Cronbach test as 9.2 and above. So what I did is I started again collecting. I reached my data collection till 550. So we can't make the final findings perfect all on a sudden. The perfection of the findings will be starting from the time from where we start the data collection. And from my point of view, while when we get into data collection, I started in the morning, 9 o'clock from Coimbatore, Chennai. So by 2:30, I was totally tired. So stop when you are tired. That is the only thing which can reduce bias from our part. Yeah.
Madam,
Okay.
what is the report writing? The research report major challenges. What is effectively innovations, madam?
Major challenges is with regard to data collection, as I have told already. Second thing is with selecting of tool, because I told you for selecting a particular tool, there might be different strategies or different principles, or might be at a site, all might be similar. For example, in ANOVA itself, there will be one-way ANOVA, two-way, and basically from finance and commerce management side. That's why I'm saying about such tools. I don't know whether all are familiar with such tools and all. So when we come to ANOVA and all, there is one-way and two-way. So that itself is a great challenge, whether to take one-way or two-way. As well as in chi-square itself, there is three sets: homogeneous, set for homogeneous, set for heterogeneous, uh, like that and all. Even in case of Z, there are almost, with my knowledge, I know only 10. I think there are more than 10 options in Z test. As well as F and
T
T
test
might
is
be.
there, sir, madam. T test.
Pardon?
T test.
T T test, it is a part of F test. So in T test itself, even though,
Statistics is major components for research report writing, madam.
pardon,
Research report writing is very important for the information sources of primary and secondary data, and tertiary section is very important.
yes, yes, yes.
That's why I
Oh,
asking for.
oh. Okay, okay, okay. So, to a large extent, I faced challenges in selecting the tools. Somewhere ANOVA, one way, two way, chi-square, three sets are there. So, all these are the challenges when you do a research. After all, in our university, we need to collect almost 150 reviews of literature. Nowadays, we had a lots of digital libraries. Still, it was a challenge because finding it in IT sector, peculiarly in a particular area, and all, it was a challenge.
I have libraries and students, madam. I have lot of information in research, report writing, also research methodology, all the
Ah,
topics concerned. That's
okay,
why
okay.
asking for that questions with answers with
It's okay.
taking the important, very
Actually,
informative, madam.
actually,
Very respondent is. Mm. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
okay. Thank you, thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Bedkar, sir, Principal, sir. Good evening, ma'am. Wonderful presentation you have made on the research methodology. I joined little late, but of course, with the discussion, I could understand the depth, what you had gone with. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I am having one question about the convenience sampling. Usually, I belong to medical field, and when we are taking a cases, case report or case series is very easy. But when we are going with a randomized control trial, means we want two groups for comparison. One is
Mm.
study and another one is control group. Over here we are taking sampling. So usually patients are not sitting, on a bench, and we cannot collect them. So as patient comes, we allow them, okay, in our study. If they fit with eligibility and diagnostic criteria, we allow them to be there in the. So we use a convenience sampling. But my question is, how this convenience sampling, when we are doing convenience sampling, whether we are really neutralizing the bias, one question, and the result what we are getting, whether they are a perfect results or they are spurious results, that is my another question. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So actually, convenient sampling is obtained by selecting a convenient population. Even as a commerce background, we also use convenient sampling in certain cases. This actually, we use convenient sampling in order to reduce the bias, or in order to reduce the misunderstanding. As you told, with regard to medical field, I'm not much aware about the medical field, but still, in your cases, I think it is more reliable to use convenient sampling, because for example, if you are making a research with regard to cardiac disorder or cardiac problems, obviously you are supposed to take sample from patient who are suffering from such disorder, isn't it? Or a person who is having some gastro problem, he can't convey the correct information what you do, isn't it? So reliability as well as bias can be reduced in convenience sampling. Even in our study, even in commerce or management, we use, while collecting data with regard to customer satisfaction of a particular product, we use convenience sampling, because we need to know whether the customer is using that product. For example, we want to know the customer's satisfaction of a Lux soap user. So we need to find out who all are using Lux. Unless and until a person not using Lux, how can he say the benefits of Lux? Isn't it? So convenient sampling, it is not a wrong method, but it should be used where it is appropriate. I
Yeah,
hope.
thank you, ma'am. I think it
Okay.
is called as non-probability method. What we
Yeah, it is
define it.
non-probability.
Yeah. Another question is, nowadays the sampling calculator is available, which makes sampling easy for us rather than going, to some apps and other things. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about the calculators which are present on online?
Online calculators, there are softwares, but online calculators, it doesn't give the much reliability, because while using statistical tool, we have standard errors. So I think paid softwares as packages are available, which would give more reliability. For example, SPSS. SPSS can be downloaded from net, but most of the updated statistical tools are not available in the SPSS which we download from net. So if we get, whereas if we get paid, we get AMOS version and all, it is updated. So using online tools, even in case of ChatGPT, ChatGPT is updated till 4.0. That is not available in default version or free version. That's my suggestion, sir.
Yeah, ma'am. Ma'am, last question. Sorry, but a last question. Ma'am, we have conducted an extensive survey for 1 year, and now we want to turn it into a paper, research paper. Whatever and we have intervened in between also, and we had given some health education element to the community. And now we want to measure the statistics. So we are having near about 525 family, near about 2,000 population we have involved. So what kind of statistical test, I was just thinking about this. I'm not in a hurry to produce my paper, but, I want a clear and right measure to produce, exact impact of that kind of study.
Sir, at a stretch, I am not able to say which this particular tool can be used on. I have to get a detailed idea about the area, what type of data you have collected, what are the objectives of your study. All this is interlinked. Unless and until I know that, I won't be able to suggest a
Yeah,
test
I'm
tool.
thinking of doing qualitative as well as quantitative analysis, because post facto we have conducted a survey of the population, those families, and we have received some information and impact of this program.
Okay, I'll give you a draft idea. That is, since you have collected sampling through convenience sampling, so why do we use probability and non-probability sampling? Is that when you know the population, that is, there are 100 cardiac disorder patients, the total number is very clear. That shows the population is clear. If the population is clear, you can use probability sampling. And if the population is not clear, that you don't know the exact number of cardiac patient in Delhi or in Chennai or in India, in such cases, I think you are not aware about the number of cardiac patients. That's why you have used convenience sampling, isn't it? Okay. If you don't know the population, usually we use non-parametric test. There is still there is some exception in case of non-parametric test. That is, chi-square is both considered as parametric as well as non-parametric. So I'm not able to give the exact answer because, as I told, I'm not clear about the objective of your study.
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. Definitely, you have to get all details, and then only we can think about it. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, Dr. Bedkasser, Principal, sir. Thank you.